Call to order.
See if I can find
I
out.
don't have an agenda.
There, you can have mine.
Thank you, ma'am. I call our City of Warr Acres Special City Council meeting, September 26th. Call to order, declare a quorum. Item number 2, consider to take action with respect to the resolution of the City of Warr Acres, Oklahoma, the city accepting beneficial interest in the amendment declaration of the trust creating the Warr Acres Public Works Authority. The authority approved action taken by the authority authorizing assurance of sales, the delivery of the promissory note of the authority to the Oklahoma Water Resource Board, ratifying the confirmation of the lease and by between the city and the authority partnering or pertaining to the certain utility systems, and authorizing the execution and delivery of the amendment lease agreement and authorizing the execution of the delivery to the amended lease agreement, and operation of the maintenance contract. Authorizing a sales tax agreement by and between the city and the authority pertaining to the year-to-year pledge of certain sales tax revenue and containing other provisions related thereto. Who wants to speak first?
You can blame bond counsel for the length of that
It's his fault.
agenda item, but,
Sure.
last time we met, we looked at adjusting rates, address with you that we had I&I issues that you were gonna address, and we also have the wastewater treatment plant that we're waiting to hear on. And so we're here before you tonight to move forward with providing an application upon your consent to the Oklahoma Water Resources Board to address a portion of your I&I issues. We're going to ask for $10 million for projects, and you are in the resolution, you are looking to engage finance and submit that to OWRB. This is a clean water SRF program. It is a federally subsidized program. I addressed this particular program on the summary that we discussed when we were looking at utility rates, that this is a low interest rate program. At the time, interest rates were closer to 3.1 to 3.15. They're still low. They've inched up about 10 basis points. We're now at 3.25, but that is fixed for 30 years. You will not lock that interest rate in until you're within 10 days of closing the transaction. Our intent, if you approve this tonight, is to submit an application by the end of next week and then go before the OWRB, Oklahoma Water Resources Board, on November 30th. And then we would close within 10 days or so of that time period. This particular program is like a line of credit. You do not actually pay interest on the loan until you pull dollars down. And so the key of what we talked about last time was if we can secure a loan while interest rates haven't skyrocketed much more, and lock that interest rate in, so you take one of the variables out of the picture. Then we would continue to work alongside with your engineer to move towards bidding out the project, getting down the road. So that's in essence what you're looking at tonight. I'd be glad to answer any questions. Like I said, not a lot of modification what I spoke to you about last time. This is a 30-year fixed interest rate loan. And today, if you were able to close and lock in rates, you'd be at 3.25. Let's cross our fingers. Hopefully that stays in there. But as you guys are aware of rates more on a personal basis, we all know where mortgage rates are, what they have done. Fortunately, this is a program that you're at closer to 3% than 7%. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
I have one or two.
Sure.
So, since I'm new, I'm not real familiar.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, What does the Water Resources Board help us do again? You kind of touched on it, and then are we guaranteed a spot in front of them at their November meeting?
I'm sorry, did you say who is the Oklahoma?
The Water Resources Board, what do they help us do again?
The Oklahoma Water Resources Board has multi-functions, but one of their functions is they act as a financing vehicle.
Okay,
And they receive federal dollars from EPA and both clean water and drinking water type of capitalization grants. You are looking at the Clean Water Program, which is for sewer projects, and they act as the vehicle, the banker for you. And I'm sorry, the second question.
Are we guaranteed a spot if we go through all this tonight? And, I mean,
I may appear over here, Nate. I don't think we've ever been turned down on an application. Our responsibility is to be able to put together the application, address your ability to pay back the loan, so that when it goes to the formal board on November 30th, they would have done all of their diligence, and at that point in time, we've not had a loan. I'm not aware of any loan, certainly in the 23 years we've been doing this, that they turned down a loan. So they're going to do all of their turning over the rocks to make sure that you have the ability to pay back the loan.
okay, thank you.
So,
I have a question.
uh-huh.
This is also a question from Councilwoman Myers and from Councilman Tribby. It's about this statement within the resolution toward the bottom that says, authorizing a sales tax agreement by and between the city and the authority pertaining to a year-to-year pledge of certain sales tax revenue. Can someone, I thought we were talking about rates, so.
Okay, in regards to the sales tax, what we have, at our last meeting, we addressed raising or adjusting your utility rates in order to generate enough revenue to purely cash flow the debt payments on this particular loan. There is a covenant that is required by OWRB, Oklahoma Water Resources Board, that you maintain a certain coverage. In essence, you have enough revenue beyond just meeting your expected debt payments, that you have what's called a debt coverage cushion is basically what we're looking at. And it's at 1.25 times. So what they would like is for you to have available net revenues in order to make the debt payments as projected. That's at least 125% of your debt payments. We typically, in a large majority of cases, that the OWRB allows for you to pledge sales tax, and you basically have this option, is that if for whatever reason your utility revenues don't come in as projected, or you have operating expenses that are greater than you project, your first option is to either reduce operating expenses or you can raise utility rates. The sales tax is purely for coverage. We do not anticipate you would ever use a nickel of the sales tax to make any payments. You always have the option to go back and adjust rates. If we were to determine that you don't want to pledge sales tax, which you in any case would never use, is that you would have to have raised rates that we discussed at the last meeting enough to generate this 125%. So this is an option for the communities to pledge sales tax and use that as an additional revenue or security, although it is our intent, and everything we did in our analysis is that you never touch a nickel of that sales tax. And that's key, because you will budget for that within your annual budget, that sales tax would come in. You would budget a transfer over to the authority in order to make the debt payment. You would also budget for that money to all come back. But this is, in the world of municipal finance, that almost any type of loan that you do, that the lender wants you to have a certain coverage level. The good thing is the Water Resources Board doesn't make you generate that out of utility rate increases. They let you pledge other types of revenue And in most cases, we always pledge sales tax.
John, would you consider that to be collateral? Is that
Yeah,
basically?
collateral security, yes.
And I know Pam talked to our CPA, and they were very comfortable with that's how this is done.
Okay.
So that's who she called the very first to make sure that everything's all right.
And is it streaming? 'Cause
And in 30-something years that Pam and other people have been in that business, they've never had to pledge a dime of this sales tax at any city, ever.
Let me give a quick little analogy, and these guys will tell you guys if I'm just flat wrong on this, since I'm only dabbling here and this is what they do for a living. When we went out to get the GO bonds, what were those secured by? Well, the property taxes, we're gonna pay it. Okay, we've got the money, we have to pay it back. God forbid, some awful natural disaster were to come through town and wipe out a quarter of the properties in town. Well, obviously, the valuation on those properties would drop, the property tax revenue would drop, but we would still have to make payment. So here, the difference, between that example and this is you don't really have a whole lot of control over property values. You have complete control over what you charge for the service that you offer. And so there is a world in which you could end up paying sales tax to cover this obligation, but it's a world in which you have made the choice to not increase utility rates if that is needed to cover operational costs, at which point you'd have a deficit between what you're bringing in and what has to go out the door, which you'd be paying with sales tax. A deficit I would suggest to you you've had in years past, just with normal operations, when rates hadn't been increased but cost of business went up. It was all coming out of the general fund. If there was a gap, you were paying it already with sales tax. So you actually have the complete control here to make sure that you never have to touch a dime of sales tax. Also means you have the control to say that, yeah, we're going to go ahead and subsidize it with sales tax. I wouldn't suggest you do that.
Yeah, just one
And Pam
comment.
needed to say something too, real quick.
I do have a question. Is the master plan completed?
No.
When would we possibly draw the first money on this? And I think maybe that might help
So,
everybody
yeah.
in knowing that we will have time to build up that money.
Based on.
Prior to us ever
based
having to
on
pay an interest
John
payment or
and
anything.
Based on John's advice, that's why we're going to the OWRB now, because we can get on that. And like he said, it's a line of credit, and you don't start paying interest till you draw down.
Right.
We are scheduled to present we're gonna do a staff update in October on our master plan. We have the dry weather model done. We are now accumulating as it starts to rain through the winter. We're gonna have wet weather and flow metering going on.
We hope.
We will present a draft report in either December or January with a final adoption or acceptance per se of the wastewater master plan in February. Okay. Then we are looking at in November, we will more than likely use the rest of your ARPA money. You have about 1.1 million that we have not spent. We'll use that to do closed circuit TV or CCTV and the cleaning, which I talked to you about when we're gonna bring in trucks that are going to actually TV everything and clean those lines. So we'll use ARPA money first because we have a deadline to spend that before June of 2024. We will probably not have designs ready until March to June of next year. So it could be summer of 2024 calendar year before we actually use this money. Because we want to make sure we're spending the ARPA grant that we got, the two 800,000s before we actually dip into this.
But during that time period, we'll have 8 to 9 months of the higher
Collection.
utility revenue coming in,
Right.
part of which was designed to make the debt payments that would
And
build
that's what I
up.
was trying, the
That's
point I
what you-
wanted
you're gonna be
to
able
get
to-
across.
We'll be ahead of the curve.
Now, I expect that we'll probably do the engineering design contract sometime between November and February, but that will be the only expenditure you would have before we go to be able to do construction, so.
Question for you guys. My loose recollection from when we went through the GO bonds, was that there was a level of commitment that if you receive the money, there will be certain things you will do, and then if there's leftover money, there can be other projects that you can work on, which of course would mean that, God forbid, if all the streets we committed to doing came in way over budget, we may have had to have subsidized out of general fund money or CIP money to cover those added costs. It didn't go that way, thankfully. Would this commit us to repairing any particular, I already know the answer, I'm pretty sure, but would this commit us to replacing or repairing any particular lines or to spending the full $10 million?
Generally, no. So, I mean, in GO bonds, there's statutory requirements that you identify specific projects, and you have to complete those projects. Here, what we're talking about is, I mean, you're gonna identify the worst of the worst.
We're gonna repair and
And then-
rehabilitate, and we're applying for a categorical exclusion on the environmental. So we're talking about CCTV, cleaning, smoke testing, we're talking about trenchless technologies, pipe bursting, slip lining of pipes. We may dig up and replace a pipe, but it's gonna be within the existing easements in the right of way. Manhole rehabilitation, manhole replacement. Based on criteria, we will probably do minimal work on the lift stations with this money, because that could be viewed as capacity improvements. So what we wrote today in the OWRB request for the meeting is we said it will have no capacity or new alignments or new types of facilities. Everything will be existing that we're working on.
Yeah, and so short answer, you'll have about a $10 million project budget, and you can do one of two things. You can either do as much as you can with the $10 million with respect to the sewer system, or if, you know, by some miracle you finish at less than $10 million, then you just don't draw all the funds and you'll only amortize what you actually drew out. So unlike the GOs where you did have to spend the full amount.
Specifically.
And the reason I asked that question is just to try and emphasize that there is a degree of control that is still retained by the city, not just in applying for this, but if the city receives it, which you guys are confident we will, in deciding what to do and when to do it.
Mark, how long are we looking at, once we start a project? A year, 2 years, 5 years?
This could span over 2 to 3 more years.
Okay.
Beyond 20.
So we're not
from
gonna do the full 10
2024,
million right up
we
front.
may be working on this $10 million portion of the project for 2026, 2027.
So we'll just take out what we need as we need it. So it's
Yes.
not we're gonna do, take
Right.
10 million out and start paying.
So the master plan will identify and prioritize the CCTV, and the cleaning is gonna hopefully help make the situation better a little bit. And then the modeling and the CCTV will help us go prioritize the worst of the worst. And then we will only put together an engineering bid document for the worst of the worst pieces and go do that citywide, wherever that might be.
Is there anything that we can do to help with using this for 2880 money at all, for getting grants or getting anything from the Fed, EPA, anything like that?
Well, you're
Like we do for road
You're
projects?
essentially leveraging, you've got once this is approved by OWRB, you have this 10 million that is your line of credit.
Mhm.
And as you work through this process, that's the beauty of the SRF program, as Mark, as you kind of look at the timing, you're 6, 12, 18 months down the road. You can continue to look at other ways to add seed money, other grants to come in
Right.
and try to do as much as possible. And that's typically how we see this, especially in the world of ARPA. I know that's kind of looking in the rear view mirror now, but as you look at potential grant type funds, you've secured 10 million, you've locked the rate in, and then you can look at this every month, every 6 months, and add to the pot of funds that could do the most critical
If you get a 50-50 match, you put in a mill, they put in a mill, you could use $1 million of
That's it.
this towards your match.
And in theory, with the rate increase that you've adopted, starting November 1, you will start collecting that money and it will be going in. remember, that rate increase was based on a $21 million potential indebtedness. And that means you're gonna be accumulating a war chest per se of dollars, that when the combined authority, the wastewater plant comes up, we can decide, okay, we've been building up that debt service, we can then go and participate in whatever that authority passes down in a resolution. You have an $11 million pot of money to go from.
And just to kind of put some numbers to what, let's say that you only pull down $1 million over the next 12 months. You're doing engineering, you're doing everything. Say you lock in at 3.25, you're gonna pay $32,500 in interest. That's it, over a year's time. We know what the revenues coming off the rate increase are gonna generate. And so those are dollars that you can also put into setting aside for the project, so.
I may have missed something, but, okay, you said that the GEO grant expires, we have to use it by June? Does this
No.
one expire?
No, the ARPA funds, we got two
Okay, ARPA.
awards of ARPA.
Uh-huh,
We got an 800,000, and then we waited like 3 weeks, and we turned in another request, and we got
Okay.
another 800,000.
we have to use them by
So
June.
we encumbered the wastewater model master plan, that 480,000. We used ARPA funds to build your wastewater model and your master plan. Now we're gonna use the rest of that money to do CCTV, smoke testing, and cleaning. But we do have a deadline, and we
Okay.
have to spend that by June of
2024.
2024.
Okay, is there as an expiration date on the resolution,
No.
on the
Not
loan that
tonight.
we're getting?
Not really. I mean, the water board will ask that we put together a construction schedule, and that, I mean, that's gonna be based on what Mark generates, so that you'll draw the funds out over 3 years or so. The reality is, if you're not done in 3 years, as long as you're making progress, I mean, we've seen them let people go on for, I've seen 10 years, I think is the longest. I mean, it shouldn't take that long. That was kind of an extreme case. But no, they don't really have a deadline that it's gotta be spent
Okay.
by at some point, they'll say, guys, let's wrap this up.
Yeah,
But-
well, I was just curious, like if weather interfered or, you know, what.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
okay.
we're going to put together bid packages that make sense, that will make it competitive. We're gonna make sure we keep the market prices in mind, and we're gonna maximize what we're doing as we're spending it. It's just like the 21-inch line through the middle school property in Putnam City. We rejected that bid because the budget was 900,000 and it came in at 1.8 or 1.9 million. We just were the victim of bad timing. I mean, it just was when all the prices have been going up. So hopefully now, with this pot of money, that's why we want to be very diligent. We want to spend as much of the ARPA money on doing cleaning and all. We might improve some of the capacity, and then as we're doing flow metering, we may end up finding lines that, you know, we can live with for another 5 or 10 years, you know, so.
That was the plan.
So the question I have then is, as you identify like the lines that are the worst and then the next worst, does that come before the council? Like, do you present it to us and we approve it? Like, how would that
You
work?
ultimately, these would have to be bid out projects, and you would have to approve going out for
Yeah,
bid, so.
so you're gonna accept the master plan model, you're gonna accept kind of a miniature CIP or a capital program based on prioritization. Then every time we do a project, we're gonna bring it to you, because it is SRF, it's federal money, we're gonna have to go through a certain process. You're gonna approve every bid package,
Okay.
we'll award it, it will have Davis-Bacon wage requirements and closeout requirements for the federal documents. We'll be responsible to make sure all that happens, so that then these guys can then at the end of the term say it's closed out, so.
I have a question regarding the line of credit. So on $1 million, 3.25 is 32.5, right? And you guys are obviously municipal finance advisors, correct? Okay. So my question is, does that interest not accrue daily? in a municipal line of credit versus, say, a private line of credit for like an individual business? Because I mean, I've got two of them, and mine accrues on a daily basis. So I mean, and if you don't make certain payments back at certain times, then I mean, it becomes like an odd number. I mean, your 32.5 was very simplified, so.
This is very, very simple how it works, that as you draw funds, you make requests. You
Right.
put in these requests.
Right.
Whatever you turn in, that particular dollar amount starts accruing interest. You estimate with the application, when do you think that you're going to complete construction? And then we typically look at within 6 months of when we think we're gonna complete construction, that is when you start making principal payments back on the note. You can make them earlier, but you're not required to make them any earlier than, I think it's a year, actually.
Yeah, the program requires you begin making principal payments within 1 year of completing construction, and that the maturity date is not more than 30 years following the completion of construction. So we'll probably have a 2 to 2.5 year construction period, and then you'll start making principal payments at that point. And at that point, you will have drawn out enough money. If you start, if you start amortizing, it'll be like a fixed amount, and you just start paying that principal payment. That's just gonna reduce the total amount of interest. And once they close out the project, then they'll go back in and they'll say, all right, the balance is this, here's the remaining payment term, and they'll do a level debt service out to maturity, so it'll be the same.
So when we say we're doing, that's why I like using the word bid packages, because we may have 5 or 6 bid packages. And then when we get to the end of the total project, in finance terms, the project is the 10 million.
Right.
So when we say, oh, well, we may stand up here 2 years from now, and Mike and I might say we did a final inspection on the project and it's over. It's not over, okay? It's not over until we do all of the bid packages, and then the project is complete.
It's one project to them, it is going to be many projects from our standpoint.
You're correct, yes. Yeah. Because that's just the way, what makes most sense to do for you is, it's not to go let out an $8 million single construction project. That's not really in your best interest, because you won't attract the bidders that can do projects that size would do less than what you're needing to do, so.
Okay, I only had one last question. I feel like Barry Curl. I have a lot of questions. So my last question is, okay, let's say I'm looking, even though I work for the government, I'm looking ahead instead of behind, which is what the government does. But let's say we get to the end of the project. We're over. Then do you have to present that to us as either do you want to not do the project for whatever, like the last lines that are left, or do you want to increase sales tax, or is just automatically increase the sales tax? Like what would happen in that scenario?
So what we will do is we will be managing this along with you financially. And if we come down and let's say we have one last project identified in a bid package, and if it's gonna go over our limit, we won't bid that. It'll sit on the shelf. We'll go find another piece or a part that we can do, or we just won't use that residual amount of that, and then you'll close out the project and we'll move on, so.
But the good news is you won't have to make that decision. I mean, you could contribute cash. If you need to go a little bit over, you could contribute cash if you've built some up. You could go out and you could borrow additional funds at that point in time. If you're looking at borrowing for, an additional wastewater treatment, or was it a treatment plant project?
That would
Yeah,
be another
if you're looking at that, I mean, you could potentially
Put it
roll
with
that in with that.
Yeah.
That's a decision you can make down the road.
Let's say we have 112,000 that we haven't spent, we could put that over into the debt associated with.
Right, I'm more looking at if we're over.
Yeah.
Like, you need 112,000.
What they're saying is you won't go over unless you want to go over, because what I'm hearing is if we spend 9.8, Mark brings your project that he thinks is going to come in at 200, and construction market goes crazy and it comes in at 400, you either say we're doing the 400 and we're going to have to put in 200, or we're just not going to do it.
Or you
And
look
so we
at
just
the
won't
waste-
use 200,000.
Or you
that was
put it in a
available.
different project.
Or you look at the wastewater revenue, and if you built up enough cash in your wastewater fund, then you might fund it beyond that. So,
And that's something you would present then to the council?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but keep in mind, this is really only addressing roughly 10% of your whole system. So we're just gonna try to use as much money as we can, the best we possibly can, and then we know we're not fixing it all, but we're going to make your situation better to avoid a consent order.
You're trying to fix the worst 10 million that needs to be done.
Yeah,
Make the biggest impact.
yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you guys too, so I've been speaking with Lucas's office, Bice's office, Langford, Mullins, and talking with them about how can we show, so doing all of this is showing them this is what we are doing to actively take care of our own community so that we can actually have a white paper done, so we can go to them and say, hey, this is what we're doing, we need another 10, 20 million dollars that we can use to leverage to, we're already in this action, we took action, take care of it ourselves, but this is where we are, and this is where we need to go. So, just to let y'all know, that's also happening.
Sadly, I can tell you, working with hundreds of cities across the state, there are far too many communities who aren't even having discussions like this, who don't even cover their cost of service and subsidize it out of general fund, whose systems are in even worse situations than ours, and they're not even starting the process yet of getting here. The reality is that sewer systems are underground infrastructure. We hear when somebody sees a pothole, you don't see the cracks in the lines that the roots are infiltrating, that the water's infiltrating, that stuff lays underground, and that's why for the last, for a very long time, the underground infrastructure in Oklahoma has deteriorated to a point that sewer backups are a major issue across the state.
Besides Grove.
Yeah, but they had to wait for the city.
Any other questions?
I have a
Go
question,
ahead.
but not related to what you guys are doing. When will the first bill hit our constituents?
November 1st, wasn't it?
Well, that's when it's due,
So it'll be
The
December
November,
rates.
the bill that comes out around the 19th of November.
Yeah, so
of
for December.
November.
That's the new
Okay.
raise.
That's the bill is due December 1,
Yeah.
Okay,
or due December 10th.
Due December 10th, right.
Yeah.
okay. Okay. And are we doing
That's gonna be a
anything
fun meeting, I'm excited.
to forewarn them that
Yeah, are
this
we
is
gonna send
coming?
anything out?
So, I wrote a letter to, put in the newsletter, as well as we'll post it. So we'll put it out there, it's people's responsibility to read it,
Right.
so that's all we can do.
And we did for like 3 months in a row, back when all this started, put something in the newsletter that said there will be an increase coming.
And they won't pay attention until they get it.
It just took longer to do it than what I thought it was going to. We couldn't get the trust to do anything.
And when that does happen, history, do you just get flooded with phone calls, or?
You guys are all gonna be getting phone
Yeah.
calls.
What do we
I'm
say?
sure the
way.
phones
Look
are
at
not
your
gonna ring.
newsletter.
are
You guys
not
have
gonna
raised
not
rates
ring.
once in my 14 years. Raised rates once in my 14 years, so.
Yes, they will be
No one
ringing, and staff has been directed to
I-
give you guys phone
Just
calls.
gonna tell 'em.
Best thing,
That's just
I'll say
great.
the,
Forward the call
What,
to us?
what ward are you? I've got 2 phone numbers for you.
At
Okay.
least you all are in agreement.
Can you
Over at
put-
Bethany, they're fighting with each other.
It's ridiculous.
so in the newsletter, can you put Scott's name above mine for Ward 2?
That's absolutely.
And that way they won't,
That's absolutely incorrect, we go alphabetical.
We're gonna put everybody's names in a pot. We'll have a cup over here that has Ward 2, Ward 3, Ward 4, and we'll just draw who's getting the next call.
Those numbers on the top.
hey, you know, I don't know, I've already talked to my neighbors.
Poor Debbie, she's the only one.
Most,
with
most of my
3.
neighbors, they are like, I tell my family members what we're paying for water, and they think that's crazy, like, that it's so low.
Yeah.
So, and I've got retired people all around me, and they're like, $14, $15 a month isn't gonna kill me. Like, that's what we've always heard, like,
Yeah.
oh, people are gonna lose their minds, they're on fixed incomes. The age is getting lower in Warr Acres, and it's, a lot of people are renting, they're not old elderly people that are all retired living in Warr Acres, so.
Well, I mean, I told my neighbor after we had the meeting, I told my neighbor John, after we had the meeting last week, I was out mowing, and I said, John, we're gonna have to do a rate increase just to cover what we have to do infrastructure-wise to the water. He goes, and he's in his 70s, he goes, man, I can swing it. I mean, let's face it, everybody's gonna have to get used to higher prices, nothing's changing. Even though that they've gotten some of the prime rates closer to where they want them to be at 4%, it doesn't matter, the consumer price index hasn't changed. It's only getting worse, and the mortgage rates are still only getting worse. So either you get with the new world, or, I hate to say it, kinda get going. It's gonna be one of two ways.
It may be your commercial that calls you more than
Right.
even the residential.
You'll get
because
commercial.
My fear is
Ward
with this
one.
whole thing has been business.
Ward 1.
We calculated apartments today, Veronica
Oh.
calculated.
I bet that's nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah. I bet
The-
that-
They don't,
Was that usually one bill? Is it?
yeah, is that
in
one
an
bill?
apartment?
That's my question too.
Yeah. it's
It
probably-
go- it goes,
probably-
it goes to the apartment
If they got a lot of
complex.
vacancies, they're not getting a
Go- the
bigger bill.
apartment-
They get charged
Part of their
per
rent.
unit, whether there is
Yes.
someone there or not.
That's right.
Ah.
Whether the tap's turned on or whether it's not.
Oh, wow.
Well, tap's turned on.
I'm talking about at the actual faucet. I'm not
Yeah.
talking about just,
Yeah, if they have it turned off on their end, but it's, Oklahoma City's turned on to the apartments.
turned on. so.
It's per door.
Guys, just at a really high level, because I want to make sure the council understands there's several things that they'd be doing if they approve this item. It's not just one action. Can you just at a high level describe the actions that are all encompassed within this item?
Yeah. So one item is we are recreating the organizational document of the Public Works Authority. It is a vintage, and by that, I mean really old
1970s.
document that, just, we have much more up-to-date language that we would use now. So, because you have no debt, it actually took us a while, and Matt was finally able to track down an actual copy of it, which doesn't appear to have been recorded with the county and the state, which is not that big a deal, except that we need an original copy to actually record it. So, which is something the water board would require us to do. Any lender would require that. And so you have no debt, so it's just kind of a good opportunity before you incur some debt. Let's get a new document put in place. Same thing with the lease agreement. We never did find a lease agreement. There may not actually be one, but because you're borrowing as an authority, you need to lease the system over to the authority so that the authority then has the rights to the revenue, which they then pledge to the water board as collateral. So we're redoing those organizational documents there. And then the authority action that you'll take in the other meeting, they are actually the issuer of the debt. So as an issuer of debt, you have to approve the debt, and you'll approve all the different documents that go along with that. As a city, when a city is the beneficiary, the city has to approve the action taken by the authority to issue the debt. So the authority approves the debt, the city says, yes, you can do that. And you're all the same people, so I would expect that, however you feel, it's gonna be the same on both sides of it. But that's why we have a separate resolution. And then separately, again, the sales tax agreement is really the only other document under this that's being approved. And that's an agreement between the city, where the city agrees to pay over those sales tax revenues to the authority so that the authority can pledge them on a year-to-year basis. But to the extent you make the debt service payment and there's no need to tap any of that sales tax revenue, it just all comes right back to the city at the end of the month and is available to the city for its normal lawful purpose. So that's a paper transaction. You actually don't have to move it to an authority account and then move it back to the city account. It's really, as long as you make the required payments of the debt. And again, the whole purpose of pledging the sales tax is so that you don't have to raise your rates even more to meet that 125 debt coverage. So it helps out the ratepayers by, leveraging this other piece of collateral that they're paying sales tax is coming in at whatever it's coming in anyways, but it just helps provide that cover so you don't have to raise your rates quite as high.
So the rate increase covers the debt payment up to 10 million, is that what we're talking about? So what happens after the debt is satisfied and the rates are still at the level that they increased to? Does that money go somewhere else for?
See how quickly he got up there?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We mentioned this earlier. Do what?
I have more of a smart aleck.
I bet you.
That's 30 years down the road, so that
Yeah.
you're gonna have other needs between. now
Right,
and
but,
then, and
you know,
chances are you probably will have to raise rates again sometime in the next 30
Yeah.
years. So,
I just want to remind everyone, the rate increase that you did at the last meeting is actually set to fund up to $21 million worth of projects. You're only doing about half of that now. Those revenues will fund million and change. So.
But to be clear, the other half wasn't for debt we anticipate taking on ourselves. It's for debt we anticipate the joint trust taking on and our share of the debt
Your
service.
share of the debt, so.
After the trust chooses to do what they're gonna do.
And we will need to work on between now and, you know, on an annual basis, we have to have a formula. Or I would advise, we advise you have a formula for some type of a annual rate
Annual
increase
increase.
based on cost, you know, CPI
CPI.
Southwest.
Right.
Because in that way, you just are, you know, taking care of the public works staff, and the line maintenance people, you're taking care of the operation side of this business that you have. So,
You notice on the water portion of your bill that's really, I mean, because that's a pass-through from Oklahoma City, right? I mean, they have a CPI that they implement every single year, and that's why it goes up just a little bit.
yeah.
Well, they all get an Oklahoma City
Yeah,
water
it's
bill,
separate.
so.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we
So,
don't,
I mean,
we
that's-
don't buy wholesale. The Oklahoma
Right.
City has the
Yeah,
lines
so-
and.
That's where that comes from. So, and you know, when you talk about rate increases too, I mean, one of the ways I like to think about it is, especially if you haven't been doing kind of cost of service rate increases on an annual basis, it's really everybody's been getting a discount on the rate for the past
20
14 years or so, and now we're jumping up to what it actually costs. So you're not,
That's
it's
what
not
we
so
tell
much you're raising the rates, you're just getting rid of the discount that they've been getting for the last 10 to 15 years.
Oh, yeah, you've been getting a discount, okay.
So the reason I'd asked them to,
Period is over.
the reason I'd asked them
Your
to sort of
coupon
high level
expired.
explain what was going on. Up until yesterday, this was gonna look a little bit like the PUD for Putnam City, where we're amending the PUD because we have no idea what the original PUD said. So we're gonna adopt amended PUD so we at least know what it says. And up until yesterday, that's what this was going to be as to the trust authority was, we have no idea what the original document did, what it would authorize us to do, so let's recreate it. Well, luckily yesterday happened to stumble across it in a place it shouldn't have been. Thank goodness we had it. Well, as he said, it was a product of a bygone era and an attorney who was drafting these things far more restrictively than what the statutes provided for. And so this isn't just a cosmetic, put a new date on it. This is actually adopting an updated document that would give the trust authority the authority to do what trust authorities can do and not limit itself.
Where did the document happen to be?
So back in 1995, my daytime employer did a site visit out here to go over policies with somebody that was the predecessor to pay him, to the predecessor to pay him, to the predecessor to pay him, and somehow managed to get a copy of the trust indenture, and it was in the packet of their handwritten notes of when they went over the auto schedules and the liability schedules to make sure it just happened to be in there.
This sounds
But
very
it was
much like a
1995.
Clinton-esque
It was
offset.
74. or
74 is when it
77.
was created. It was a
Yes.
June of 95 policy review that they happened to get a copy of it.
It sounds like a laptop that's been confiscated. I've heard that story in the media recently.
It would have been a lot easier if we still had our paper files. I could have just gone through there, but
But it
instead we
would've
were
been
having to
the
go
wrong
through
year,
old
yeah.
scanned documents and just happened upon it.
Interesting. So we're taking future measures to prevent documents like this leaving the bounds of, the
Well,
boundaries of City Hall, correct?
And as they said, you know, the Economic Development Authority, if we didn't have a copy of that trust indenture, I know where to find it at the county. It was filed of record with the county. This one, if it was filed with the county, it wasn't logged in correctly, I have searched every which way I could and
I did too.
could
We
not
couldn't
find it.
find it, so.
So I shouldn't have said I had no more questions, but Mark made a question that I need to address or to ask. Like I said, I work for the government. When you said you will have to, or we will have to figure out a formula, who's the we? Is it Pam? Is it you? Is it Mike?
Successor?
That are,
So,
our advisors.
so John and I have proposed that you may come up with a formula based on the Consumer Price Index Southwest, or Matt, we talked about maybe it should be CPI Southwest, or what was the percent?
This amount or CPI, whichever is higher, here's what it'll look like, what will be proposed to you. Currently, the rates are set in a very specific dollar amount by ordinance. What I'm gonna bring to you once, I'm not the one who's gonna come up with a formula, but I'll be the one that puts it in ordinance form to take it out of the ordinance, and instead, in the ordinance say it'll be set by resolution.
Yeah.
You would then adopt a resolution that would essentially start a formula that unless you stop it, this is just what the rates would be and how they'd be calculated year over year. You would always have the ability to stop that, but it would also mean that, and I hate to say this, but what the heck, you would not be asked to vote for a rate increase ever again.
How often is the CPI Southwest updated? Is it an annual update on that? Is it
Well,
per 6
it's-
months, or is it by the quarter?
So it's updated monthly.
Yeah, it's a rolling monthly.
As a rolling average, but what Matt and we discussed is it will be sometime in the August to October timeframe, we need to adopt this formula by resolution.
Okay,
In-
so, but still, my original question was, who's gonna decide that for me? You keep saying "we." Is there, like-
Ultimately, you all would vote to approve it. Now,
But
what you're
who's
really
going
getting
to
at is,
present, who's gonna present the formula? Who's gonna say, this is what we should be using as a formula, this will be the order?
Us as
City
your
engineer. Yeah.
consulting
Okay.
engineer in concert with your financial advisor and your city attorney.
Okay.
I
The
will
three
tell
of
you
us.
that in the resolution that the trust approved, it states in that resolution that every year when we do the annual change, they will also either increase it by the 3% or the CPI.
and you're talking about the joint,
And that is
the
trust.
joint trust.
Whichever is greater.
Yours is greater.
So the bill you'll get as a city from the joint trust is guaranteed to go up every year. And so that'll be part of the discussion is, the joint trust will be raising your portion.
They're gonna be raising it every year.
And so we'll wanna make sure we have a number that comes in greater than that number, because then you're gonna be in the same boat that you were now, which was your rates were enough to cover the bill from the authority and barely anything else, so, yeah.
The last time it got changed, which until we started looking at it this time, we didn't realize, but the per 1,000-gallon rate that we were charging was exactly what the trust was charging us. So everything that was per 1,000-gallon was going straight to the trust. We were keeping none of it.
So you weren't
That part did not get
you were
changed
not
the last time it got
recovering any
changed.
Public works or line maintenance effort
Oh,
on
wow.
your sewer line.
It was coming out of the budget, right?
So,
And then
it
Rich.
will, the we will be. the
Okay, that was all, that's
GOU,
all, right,
And the we will be
We will be
your
now.
team
Yes, we
here.
will.
okay.
And it will be somewhere August to October, because there's no point in doing anything for January 24. We're not gonna go talk, put that in front of the customer base then. We're gonna have something in place by January of 25.
Well, before that, because,
Yeah.
but it will be coming.
The thing that scares me is what happens if we have another situation like what went down in July, like what went down in July of 2022, when everything just went berserk. I mean, the Fed was raising rates. They've raised rates, 11 out of 16 times? So if the CPI adjusts accordingly to whatever the Fed does, I mean, we could see an explosive increase in our rates. I mean, absolutely explosive. I mean, you saw what happened. I mean, things went nuts for a while
I think
there.
19% or something.
Yeah, and that's of concern. Maybe these guys can alleviate that concern, because I'm not an economist, I'm not a municipal financial advisor, but that's something that strikes me as of interest.
So Scott, if your question is, do we have a way to protect that if the formula that
We
gets
come up with it, or
developed
they come up
is
with
going
it.
to lead to a
Substantial.
unpalatable rate increase, the way that I would envision structuring it to present to you would be essentially that you would get an informational report of what the rates are going to be based on the formula. If you don't have an action item to stop that, then it'll just go into place.
Then we have to put
But
an
you,
action item.
but you would have to have an action item to stop it from going into place. The idea being, get the formula, it may need to be updated over time, just as things change, but get the formula, run it like a business, put it on autopilot, get the informational report so that you know what it's gonna look like. But you would have to stop it at that point, as opposed to where we're at now, where you have to affirmatively change rates, and to do that, you have to change the law to change your business rates. That kind of goes to why I don't think it should be in the ordinances to begin with, is it's not something that needs to be a law. It's a business activity, not a governmental activity. But it got put in the ordinances because that's how a lot of cities did it, just because that's the way it was always done. But it's not something that, heck, there could be a world in which we disentangle this thing and you actually get the formula, do the resolution on the PWA side. That's not how it will be starting out right away, because the city sets the rates right now, but a lot of cities, the PWA just does that part of it. Because there are some cities where the PWA is actually run like a separate entity.
And what
City
is the
council members are
PWA?
not, Public Works Authority. The thing you're recreating tonight. Tahlequah Public Works Authority is a completely separate board, completely separate executive director, completely separate staff. They run as an independent legal entity. Now, if they wanted to do what we're talking about doing tonight, that'd be a lot of fun, because there's some political strife between the Tahlequah Public Works and the city of Tahlequah, but the city would have to approve it, but in that case, it would be the city as a completely separate body, considering whether or not to let the PWA do this. Yours is set up like almost every other, where city council are the trustees. And so it's one and the same, so it'd be kind of schizophrenic for you guys to want to do something on the PWA side, but not approve it on the city side, because it's all the same people voting for it.
I just think we need to be smart with our money, bottom line. Be prepared.
Is there a way when it's presented to us that it would say the formula up to a certain percentage? Like, so there's a cap each year?
That would be the loose idea, because, we're still talking months away, but the loose idea that's been kicked around is a formula based on an outside metric, as well as a fixed figure. Now, the idea was the higher of the two, it could be the lower of the two. That would just be up to you guys to give some direction, because it's ultimately your call.
Or it could be based on the percentage, not less than this percent and not more than that percent.
Right, like that's what I'm saying, like some
You
kind
have
of
kind of a
ceiling.
range,
So it
and
doesn't
as
go
long
up
as the
like
formula's within
20%
the
in 1 year, you would be able to stop it.
Well, and I think that's so like Pam was referring to, the trust or the authority did the
The
they
joint
got
trust.
three
I just want to make sure we
percent.
distinguish the
Yeah,
Bethany Warr
the
Acres Trust.
Bethany Warr Acres General Authority did the 3% add-on, the CPI or the 3%. Well, so we need to watch that number, because that number may, sometime in the next 6 to 8 months, that number they may raise rates again.
Right, and that's
So,
what Scott's concern was, right?
Yeah.
Well, with the fact that elected officials sit on that board, and right now Bethany has the majority, we have the minority, trust me, it's always a concern about what happens on that board as to what happens at census. Like, it's very concerning with all the conversations. So to answer your question, if it went up to the 19%, there ain't no way that the trust is gonna do that.
Just like when you put things on autopilot, people tend to forget that they're on. So, and that's the scary thing, is it's in human nature to forget that things are turned on. and not
Right.
turned
Or off.
Well, and it was actually supposed to be advancing every single year since 2013, and it was never addressed by that board.
Well, at least we're doing stuff logically here with
Right.
actual drawn-out numbers versus cocktail napkin planning, so.
Right.
Matt, I know we're getting a little afield of our actual discussion item, but you could probably take that concern and build something into the resolution that maybe instead of autopilot, you ratify it on an annual basis so that you do take action. But you've got the precedent that it's in place, or like you said, it gets approved without action unless you want to take some action, but there's kind of
Some safeguards.
a tickler on the calendar that, all right, we're gonna either take action or not take action.
Remember during COVID, the council voted not to change the annual average. We left it where it was.
As more people were staying home and using water, and
Yeah.
so it would have caused everybody's rates to go up just based on the volume they'd been using.
But, yeah, as a council, you're always gonna have the ability to adjust as you see fit, even, again, if the formula kicks out an absurd result, you've got the ability to adjust it on a one-off basis.
Actually, we do all this, so we do direction. Quite simply, this is an enterprise. You have to look at it every year. You have to see, this is what we thought, this is what the operational costs are, this is what the debt payments are. And so if you look at this year to year, because CPI is not, although you may look at Southwest, you have all types of components that may be at 3 or 4%, but you may have PVC pipe at a 30% increase. So you can't really, look at this abstractly like that. You have to analyze this every year. It's a business, it's
guideline that you gotta adjust to, one way or the
Do we
other.
have any idea what CPI Southwest is currently at? Just not even as a talking point, but just kind of where it
We can
sits.
look it up.
I thought last
I
time
don't
somebody
know
said
how
it
to
was
look it up,
9.
So,
Well, Matt does.
Matt does,
Siri
Matt's on
does.
Google. Ask Siri.
I think one time when we were talking, you said it was 9
Yeah, it was
I
up,
have that
it was up that high.
for some
yeah,
reason.
Yeah.
But those cities that are, let's say,
3.7,
3.7.
Okay,
12-month rolling average.
okay,
So it's dropped quite a bit.
that's good. We move to
But
approve this,
but
or what?
cereal's up 6%.
Siri?
Cereal.
Cereal? Is it like Captain Crunch?
Cheerios. I was gonna go Cheerios, but
I was gonna say,
Let's not bring
I
Captain
like
Crunch
Cinnamon
into
Toast
this,
Crunch.
okay?
I mean, that's-
That man's an American treasure.
oh, okay.
So I have a question for Pam, sorry.
Don't be sorry. That's what
So
we're here
since we have to like, say we're holding so much of sales revenue, does that get put in a separate account? You're gonna keep track of it separately? Like, so we don't use it to pay bills when really we're supposed to be having it to leverage off our loan? Like, how is that going to work as far as, do you understand what I'm
As far-
saying?
You're talking about the sales tax?
Right,
I mean,
this-
essentially, it should have no impact on your day-to-day operations. It's available to you.
From what John told me and from what Tammy told me,
At Crawford.
from Crawford's office,
Yeah.
we'll have an entry on our budget that says transfer out to PWA, blah. We'll have an entry that says transfer in from PWA. So it's paperwork only, and he did say a while ago that I would not ever move any money. And I will tell you, last Friday, Alan probably got sick and tired of me saying, we don't have sales tax. And he's like, well, I haven't talked to John. And I talked to Alan probably 15 times on Friday afternoon. And I just kept ranting and raving about, I don't have extra sales tax to pledge for this. And so then John called me Friday evening, but I was in the middle of a football game when I saw the message, and I was like, well, I'm not gonna call him back.
Okay,
So I did talk to Crawford's, and she says in the 30-some years she's worked for Crawford's office, she's never seen a city have to use their sales tax. They've always brought in enough revenue, and that was another reason I wanted to know, when would we draw the first money?
Right.
Because if we're not drawing the first money for a year out, I will tell you, just on the apartments alone, we're talking $30,000 more in revenue. Now, part of that will go to the trust, but I was shocked at that number.
well, I remember looking at the rates, it looked like commercial and apartments
That's
were gonna
1
get,
month.
we're gonna get hit hard.
So we should not have any problem generating the revenue to
Oh, I
pay
just,
by
talking about the
time we
semantics of
finally get that.
budgeting, as far as like, you can use that as a revenue, or did you have to
You're-
reserve it just,
what
keep
you're
it
gonna-
just in case something were to
what you're
happen?
gonna have in reality is you're gonna be bringing in the revenue to cover the full debt service before you have to cover the full debt service. So you actually will build up a surplus.
Just for almost
And,
a
and what
year.
they've kind of been pointing to here is some of that money, I mean, you could keep it there to pay the debt service and offer security in case you had fluctuations in what people are paying. You're also gonna be collecting the money before you need it.
Right.
It could be extra money that's available to do capital projects.
More than likely, your Public Works Authority budget is gonna look just like it has. You've had a carryover
Just gonna
every
see the ins
year.
and out, like
We
transfer.
budgeted this amount of money is what was needed. Next year, there was this much carryover, and we'll just keep carrying that money over until we have to start spending it, and then you'll see a line that says interest payments as an expense, or interest payments and principal as expenses. But until we need it, we won't be budgeting the extra money.
And you do not have to lockbox the sales tax revenue to pledge it to this. I mean, they're,
I wanna make sure we build that other up. I don't wanna
Yeah,
worry
no,
about
it's-
sales tax.
but that, yeah.
Well, I think
That
that's
had
the
me
thing
so
that you don't-
stressed
Well,
out, you don't even know.
like I said, I think that was
You
my
don't-
concern, was like, you have to keep this amount just in case. But if you're saying you just operate as normal and you just, the same day, transfer out, transfer back in, you show that you made it, then,
be
yeah.
quite honest, I mean,
You're not even gonna be doing
good or
the
bad,
transfer.
in my prior life,
Right.
and I work with Crawford's office, with Mike and started his firm and so forth. We actually talked about how to do this probably 25 years ago, and that's how they've been addressing it, it's how GASB addresses this.
So if you're looking for a recommended motion, rather than have somebody go through the pain that Roger had to go through in reading the item, if you're good with the actions that are in it, a simple motion to approve the item as written.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution for item number 2.
I'm going to second that.
No, actually, I want Roger to read the entire document, just to make sure we haven't missed anything.
Happening, bro.
Because there's so much more in the document than just this.
Schmidt,
Yay.
Tribby,
Nay.
Myers,
Yay.
Von Thayer,
Yay.
Douglas,
Yay.
Prince,
Yay.
Morris,
Yay.
Mayor.
Yay.
Motion approved.
Item 3, adjournments.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Don't leave yet.
Schmidt,
No.
oh, we have another meeting.
Yes, we do.
Right, so no
Don't leave
adjourn.
yet.
Prince,
Yay.
Morris,
Yay.
Myers,
Yay.
Douglas,
Yay.
Tribby,
Abstain.
Von Thayer,
Yay.
Mayor.
Yay.
Motion approved.
And also, literally before you guys leave, we have documents for you guys all to
Yes.
sign.
You got to sign the new Public Works Authority. trust
Everybody
and
has to
insurance.
sign.
Okay.
So.
3
as
copies, 3
trust-
signatures.
Not you personally, it's as a trust.
Action item on PWA,
All right.
or I guess you got to call it.
That one's done.
All right, call to order the Public Works Authority meeting September 26th. Call to order, declare a quorum. Anything that I need to do? Do I have to read the whole thing?
Didn't we already cover this?
We got
Oh,
item
there's
2.
more things.
Everybody can read item 2.
Everybody can read item 2.
Or you can have Roger read it.
I'm not gonna do that, because the attorney said I didn't have
Or
to.
Mark.
And make Mark read it.
You know, there's a guy at ACOG that has a great radio voice. Have him read over everything.
What you're saying is we need an
beforehand.
announcer for our, and now, item 2.
I mean, that'd be awesome. I'm just
Come
saying.
on down.
So, would you like to go ahead and explain item 2?
So this resolution is the actual resolution approving the issuance of debt by the PWA. It includes, on the PWA side, also approving the amendment or the adoption of the amended declaration of trust, approves the note, provides for the parameters. It'll be a loan in the amount of not to exceed $10,300,000, not to exceed, what do we use, 4% as the interest rate? Yeah, not to exceed a 4% interest rate. Again, we're estimating right now 3.25%, I think. And that'll be set about 10 days prior to closing, so hopefully right around the end of November is when that would get set. Approves the loan agreement, designates Bank of Oklahoma to serve as the local trustee. You have to have a trustee bank programmatically. During construction, the water board will just send you an invoice that says, here's how much interest you owe on March 15 or September 15. Once we fully amortize at the end, when we get to the end, then you'll actually make monthly deposits based on whatever your 6-month debt service payment is gonna be, which will be the same every 6 months. You'll make a 1/6 payment every 15th day of the month, and then on the 16th, after 6 months, then the trustee bank will make the payment to the water board. So again, that's programmatically how all of their loans work. So authorizes a trust agreement with them, authorizes a security agreement that just provides a lien for a lien on the revenues of the system and the pledged sales tax revenue, the amended lease agreement that we've talked about, the sales tax agreement that we've talked about, and then just approves various covenants, authorizes the application that John will submit here at the end of next week, approves the professional services agreements with our firm as bond counsel and John's as financial advisor, authorizes the payment of fees and expenses in connection with the loan, and then other necessary actions.
Is there a reason why we're doing Bank of Oklahoma over any other bank?
There's only a couple of banks that provide corporate trust services. So, I mean, one, it has to be a specific bank that would qualify under the water board's programmatic requirements to do corporate trust for public finance transactions. So in Oklahoma, we have Bank of Oklahoma, Bank First, and UMB Bank. And I think that's about it. Bank of Oklahoma is actually the cheapest of all of them. I mean, it's a $500 annual or acceptance fee and then a $500 annual fee. The others are a little bit higher than that. There's, beyond that, there's no difference between all of them. They're all capable of doing it. but-
Okay. That's fine. Thank you for looking out for that a little bit. Every little bit helps. Von Thayer really appreciates it. I'd say you really appreciate that.
I do,
Saving the money.
absolutely.
I know.
Being
Being
Minding the
very
budget.
diligent with it, absolutely. Anybody have any questions?
Go ahead, Judy. No, go
Is
ahead.
that one of these two?
It's a
Is
Public
that the big
Works.
thick one?
The back 3 pages are the ones for the public work.
Should late Councilman Nip be listed
Resolution.
on here as a trustee? And
No, we actually took his name off because, I mean, he's passed, so he is no longer a trustee at this point.
The final
Your
document.
documents still show it. I
Yes,
did
I'm
not,
sorry.
we
That's right.
Okay.
corrected the signature documents
When-
because whenever we were on the phone late in the day, I was like,
Thank you for
John
reminding me. We
Nip
decided not
actually
to waste
passed
paper
away.
by reprinting the
that's
whole
fine,
thing.
yeah, because
So,
we had
yes,
him
and-
on that.
I forgot I
on
gave them
page
the
17
whole
as well.
thing.
and I was
When
just like,
all
wait a minute.
8 of you come by to sign 3 times, you will see that it actually
Yeah,
has
it's
the
a-
position listed as vacant.
Okay.
So we're
Okay.
all signing one document, like
3
3
times.
documents, yeah, right there, though?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, because I was gonna say, because I don't have the same pages as you do. Okay.
It's just one page sign.
Yeah. It's just
No, we're
your
just
copy
going-
has his name, these do not.
Correct.
These are the official ones that all of you will come to sign 3 times before you leave.
Oh, the ones
Four.
that you have.
Right, not
4
your
of them,
These are just.
Pam tasked me with
for
making
lack of
sure I got
reprinting
all your
paper.
signatures, and I do not want to make Pam mad.
because you and I have other ones we have.
Yes,
to
we
sign.
have other ones.
Right, and that's
to
what we're
sign.
saying. You guys probably have different ones than we have, and he has the,
He's got the official.
Mike, Roger, and Roger can verify. You don't want to see Pam mad.
Please don't make me upset.
so I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution for item number 2.
I'll second. Oh,
May as well you go ahead and make the first one.
Schmidt,
Yay.
Von Thayer,
Yay.
Myers,
yay.
Prince,
Hey,
Morris,
Yay.
Douglas,
Yay.
Tribby,
Yay.
Mayor,
Yay.
motion.
Motion,
Go ahead, Judy.
Motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn?
Just declare. You don't have to take a vote.
Hey, just declared,
Everybody
Declare
wants to stay
adjournment.
all night?
Adjourn.
Somebody second?
no, we're just adjourned.
You said you don't need
Oh, no.
You're gonna mess up Pam's.
No, may as well. One of you guys second. One of you guys second over there.
Who's gonna second? They're waiting on it.
We're gonna vote, Matt, okay?
Yeah, we're gonna vote. Don't listen to Matt, okay. It'll mess up Pam's.
It's like voting to come out of executive session.
Who's gonna?
Who
gonna
seconded that one?
On there.
Von Thayer did.
Okay.
But nobody, oh, so now we have a second, so
Well, we
no,
didn't
we're
wanna
not.
we didn't wanna make you
by
mad.
acclamation.
Sorry.
Thanks for putting up with us.
We used to always
Our
do that in the
questions.
trust meetings,
Absolutely.
this is how we would do
Good
it.
question.
Myers.
Thank you again, gentlemen.
Yay.
Von Thayer,
Yay.
Douglas,
Yay.
I guess you did it.
Morris,
Yay.
Prince,
Yay.
Tribby,
Nay.
Schmidt,
Yay.
Mayor,
Abstain.
That's awesome.
Got two
and
votes.
stay
That's
all
what I'm
night.
talking about.
Thank you guys for your presentation
Yeah,
and
gentlemen,
answering the
thank you.
questions.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, Nate, you wanna come help us do
Yes.
what we?